to Saturday Night at the Movies, the podcast that celebrates classic, cult, and current films and the people that made them, and many other aspects of pop culture and history. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer is Ben Shrewsbury, and our signature theme was composed by Greg Lerhoff. Here it's always Saturday night, and our mission is to chronicle film and pop cultural history, one memory at a time, with a little touch of history, especially tonight. Our guest is author, filmmaker, documentarian, and historic site preservationist Richard Stanley, whose book, Otto Rahn, Grail Hunter, subtitled The Secret of the Cathars and the Return of the White Lady, is an extraordinary historical work on one man's search for the Holy Grail, kind of a modern Indiana Jones story. Welcome to Saturday Night the Movies, Richard.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure being with you guys tonight. Um, I think it very much is the backstory to certainly Raid of the Lost Ark, if not the Indiana Jones franchise. Certainly it's the backstory for the bad guys anyway, and it all grows out of me actually being commissioned by Channel 4 television all the way back in 1990 to try to establish whether or not there was any truth to the story that the Nazis were trying to get their hands on the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, the spear of Longinus, the spear that's meant to have pierced Christ's side on the cross, and any number of other talismanic and potentially extraterrestrial power objects. So this was, yeah, already a choice commission. I don't know why they picked me. Maybe it's because of the hat. And I'm
Well,
not a medieval historian.
you don't happen to have a whip sitting on your desk, do you?
Well, I do now, but
Um, I love history, as everyone knows. I'm into film. Certainly, the Indiana Jones movies spoke to me. And of course, the third film, Indiana, the and the let's see, what is the title of the third film? Indiana Jones,
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
and then The Last Crusade with, of course, Sean Connery. Um, Tell me a little bit about your documentary work in 1990. That is quite a task you set yourself up to. The idea that the Nazis were into the occult is interestingly borne out in your book because you focus your story on Otto Rahn, who before World War II was I guess he was I don't know how to describe him, but he launched his own search for the Grail. I guess you'd call him an historian of sorts, but he later joins the Nazis and is a member of the SS. But gather Himmler brought him in because of his occult background. Would that be accurate?
Well, basically, Otto was obsessed with the Holy Grail, and it was his obsession. And I think it drove him from a very young age, and long before the Nazis really came on his radar. And he already came to the Pyrenees, which is where I'm talking to you from right now, and to the castle of Montsegur, all the way back at the end of the 1920s. And yeah, did his research, which included doing a lot of actual excavation. He took hundreds of photographs and dug up the caves in the Ariège. So it wasn't just an esoteric or a mystical journey. He was also pragmatic and was looking on some level for a physical treasure or physical relics to prove the story. He was obsessed with trying to prove that the tale of Parsifal, the 12th century Grail epic, was a reflection of real history in the same way that say the stories of Troy and ancient Grecian history reflected real history. So in a very Germanic.
Excuse me for interrupting. Let's go back a
No
little
worries.
bit because I think for those who are listening and watching who aren't as familiar with the Grail mythos or history, and forgive me if I start with the very simple fact that the Grail is supposedly the cup of Christ that he drank before he was crucified, correct?
Well, they do say that, but frankly, in all of this, I find Christianity is kind of a bit late in the day. It's quite clear that the chalice and the Grail was already a sacred image and a symbol long before Christ. I mean, even in the Old Testament, Abraham uses a cup to celebrate Passover with Melchizedek, and way back in the Old Testament. So we have to assume that yeah, the chalice is more ancient than Christianity, and the Holy Roman Church did a good job of appropriating it and turning it into a Christian relic. And I think it's been floating around an awful long time. In the it morphs a lot. I mean, there's any number of things which could be described as the Holy Grail. The actual term itself doesn't show up until first the troubadour epic Parsifal, written by Chrétien de Troyes, and then the second take on Parsifal by Wolfram von Eschenbach, kind of coins the term. In the earliest surviving account of the Parsifal quest narrative, because there were in all likelihood earlier versions now lost to us. But in Chrétien de Troyes' 12th century version, the Grail is a sort of golden dish or serving platter with a Christian fish symbol on it that's brought into the hall. And in Wolfram's Parsifal, coming maybe 50 years later, um, the Grail is a hard, dark stone, lapis lazuli, the stone from the sky, which is some kind of magical healing stone, analogous, I guess, to the philosopher's stone of the alchemists. And then in later versions of the tale, it becomes a cup. It becomes the cup of Christ. It also becomes the literal blood of Christ. And in the conspiracy verse in from the 1980s onwards, thanks to Holy Blood and the Holy Grail and later Da Vinci Code, it becomes the literal bloodline of Christ. So there's any number of potential cups and
So,
different
so
items floating around Europe.
did Ron know what he was looking for, or did he have like multiple choices of? I mean, obviously, we're all, you know, those of us who saw Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade were expecting to see some kind of cup, and of course, that's exactly what is shown. But um, but this is so interesting to me because I always find the story behind the history and the myth is often more interesting. And when you got this commission in 1990, um, was that when you were first introduced to the name Otto Rahn? Was that how you first heard about him?
It was indeed. The first thing I did really was I dived into the Ahnenerbe SS, because it was really clear that most of the occult and esoteric research was carried out by not by Adolf Hitler, but by Heinrich Himmler, the Reichsführer of the SS. It seemed Hitler himself had little or no interest in the occult, and was quite dismissive of Himmler's cranky interests. But there was a period from I guess early to late 1930s where Himmler had his own private Aleister Crowley type rune mage, this bizarre character of Karl Maria Willigut, who claimed to have total recall of 8,000 years of ancestral memory, and who basically convinced Himmler that he was the reincarnation of the King of Saxony, and told Himmler to buy the Schloss Wewelsburg, the SS Order Castle, and restore it so it would become the foundation, the court of a mighty warrior knight order. He also believed it would be the site of an apocalyptic final battle between Germany and Russia. And it was also Willigut Weistor's idea to he designed the Totenkopf ring that binds the 12 Obergruppenführers together, and basically created this dark Camelot. And it's natural that if you've got a sort of dark Merlin and a dark Camelot, Himmler had a round table commissioned around which the 12 Obergruppenführers would sit, that you'd also need a Grail and a Nazi Parsifal. And when Otto wrote his book about his discoveries in the south of France and the lost history of the Cathars in 1934, it became a bestseller in Germany, and came to Heinrich Himmler's attention. And Himmler demanded that Rahn be brought to Berlin, and he was, inducted into the SS, into the Black Order, which was hugely problematic for Rahn on some levels because he was not only out gay, but he was also Jewish via his mother Clara. So Otto ends up being a gay Jewish Grail Hunter, but also an SS man, which is a truly
Boy,
bizarre state of affairs.
talk about conflicts of interest. Now, the subtitle of your book, The Secret of the Cathars, how do you pronounce it, Richard?
Well, Cathars is good enough. It's wildly disputed as a word, I have to say. In the present era, there's a move online and a move, I believe, backed by conservative Christianity to argue that the Cathars never existed, based on the fact that they never actually called themselves that. I mean, as far as I can tell, it's a historic insult or a term that's been used since their time, but it's widely used to refer to an earlier tranche of Christianity, a variant form of Christianity. I mean, up until the rise of the Holy Roman Church as the recognized by Constantine as the official Christianity, there were countless variant forms, and then from the time that the Holy Roman Church came to power, they set about basically silencing and all other variant Christianities, and effectively the Cathars themselves would have thought of themselves as Christians and described their adepts as good men or good women, and I think they represent an earlier form of Christianity, possibly more in line with the beliefs of John the Baptist and the Essenes, the proto-Christians of that period.
So this was a brutal repression. Once they knew of these splinter groups, the formal church really made an effort to just kill them off, and I guess they pushed them out of Italy. The Cathars, as you point out in the book, settle in this part of France. I think France you're living in, is that accurate?
Yes, it is. Where I'm based now is very much the heart of Catharism. But one of the extraordinary things about this is that the Holy Roman Church felt the need to exterminate them so completely and with such extraordinary ferocity. It's kind of unprecedented in even in medieval history. I mean, the crusade that Pope Innocent III called against Occitania, which was the country that once existed here. Um, it's far more brutal than anything that happened in the Holy Lands. It became a war of extermination, which went on for generations. Even the language Occitan was criminalized. For years, there was laws that meant you couldn't marry or procreate unless you married someone who spoke French. They worked to literally breed out the Occitan people over a period of centuries. Vegetarianism was criminalized for centuries because the Cathars believed that animals had souls and could reincarnate as people could reincarnate as animals, which is a big no-no for the Holy Roman Church. So therefore, meat eating was made compulsory for generations. Back in Cathar times, another thing that the Holy Roman Church really wasn't having was gender equality. Women could officiate as priests and could inherit land, command armies. Children could take their mother's surnames. So various ideas. Also, a belief in reincarnation, which makes it a bit closer to Buddhism in some way. The Holy Roman Church doesn't abide by reincarnation. It's a heresy.
So many threats to the formal church. Now I've put up a slide for those who can see the show. I have a slide of the castle, the on top of the Mount Segur mountain in formerly Occitania. This is the only real physical evidence of the Cathar period, Richard. This is the only thing that's really standing? This was a Cathar stronghold, correct?
You could certainly call it that. That's the castle of Montsegur. I mean, it was, I think there's always been a castle on top of that mountain since the mists of unrecorded time. So I don't know what it was originally. But back in the 12th century, one of the last and greatest of the Cathar high priestesses, a venerable lady named Esclamond de Foix, had a vision that the apocalypse was coming and endowed Montsegur to rebuild the castle and to try to create a celestial fortress that would protect them in the terrible times to come. And it took effectively two lifetimes or a few generations before the Crusader army finally arrived at Montsegur. And there in that pretty small mountaintop, it's the castle itself's not much bigger than a tramp freighter. It had maybe 250 knights, maybe 300 capable fighting men. They were ultimately besieged by an army of up to 10,000 dogs of war in a siege and battle that went on for 10 months. And by that time of that final stand, regardless of my views on either Catholicism or the Cathar way, um, by the time they got there, the those 10,000 dogs of war included Teutonic knights and Basque mercenaries. It was under the aegis of the King of France, the Holy Roman Pope, the Domingo de Guzman's Spanish Inquisition. The initial military campaign was headed by Simon de Montfort, known as founder of the British bicameral parliamentary system. So I like to think that at the end, those 250 fighting men stood against the world, at least the known world in the 13th century, because it was basically everyone else against Montsegur by the very very tip of it. And yeah, regardless of my sympathies for their beliefs, and it's just in a sheer underdog kind of way. I think the Battle of Montsegur in those 10 months is one of the great untold stories of European history.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of the siege of Masada in Israel, in terms especially of the outcome, because I think I read that they basically killed everybody in the castle. There were no
Well,
survivors.
it runs a strong parallel with both the Siege of Masada and the Battle of Thermopylae, but it's much more recent. Both those events are so far back they're pretty much in classical history and or mythology and are hard to pin down. Whereas the Siege of Montsegur was 7 centuries ago, and the inquisitors, like the Nazis, were sticklers for keeping records. They took depositions, and we know the identities of three-quarters of the people involved and what happened to them and how they died. So it's been possible to, yeah, reconstruct a sense of the last stand between these two opposing theological principles. And at the tail end of it, they were given the option of recanting, of basically rejecting their faith and swearing to abide by the dogma of the Holy Roman Church or being burned alive. And approximately between 260 and 300 people at Montsegur not only refused to recant, but apparently a number of folk who had fought alongside them for the 10 months converted at the last moment. And even though they knew that they were going to die on the fire, and apparently a stockade was built at the base of the mountain filled with brushwood. And yeah, on March 16th, 1244, approximately 300 people were burned alive for their faith by the Holy Roman Church. The practice of burning Catharism, burning heretics, really was originated by this Albigensian crusade. And once the fires were lit, that basically went on for centuries and fed into the witch hunts that came afterwards. And
Sure,
But
sure. Now I mean, now you're living in the area. You've poured over it. You've from reading your personal accounts of being near the castle, you find it a quite mystical place with elements of this paranormal present. What's it like walking on those stones and just being in that area? Do you feel something?
oh, I surely do, sir. I surely do. That's why I'm here. And the place and the mystery is its own reward. Just just 3 months ago, I was up in the castle again, and yeah, had an absolutely extraordinary night. And at one point, I remember lying on the front battlement, just staring at it all, singing, "Our sweet mystery of life, at last I have found you," because it really was perhaps the answer to what I'd been looking for. I didn't know I had been looking for something, but I think Montsegur and the mystery of the Grail and the sheer force of this land, the occult force that is imbued within it, I guess gave me the proof that I was looking for. I was very much on the fence, but with a typically stubborn, mechanical male kind of tendency towards atheism up until I got involved with Montsegur. And I think also the Rahn story impacts upon World War II and upon a period so ghastly that it's very easy to think, where the heck is God in the middle of all this? It does probe into those, yeah, those issues.
Uh, the Ron is an interesting character. There's quite a mystery about what happened to him. I think according to your research, he disappears about 1939, just as the war is about to begin. Is that accurate?
Yeah, Otto only spent a very short while in the SS. I mean, I think it went to his head at first. He thought he was going to have the full resources of the Third Reich to carry out his research. And there's a couple of years that you can see he's going a little power crazy. Yeah, but well, it was actually kind of acting like an ideal Indiana Jones bad guy. And I think the brigade Führer in charge, Willigott Weistor, the Rune Mage, really should have been the bad guy in an Indiana Jones movie, because he's just, yeah, such a character for it. So there was a time when he was seduced by the Black Order, but it seems to me that there was a movement within the SS by Christian SS men, soldiers, good and decent SS men, who were freaked out by this Luciferian element, by having gay Jewish medievalists being promoted above them. And the more that Willigott Weistor's paganism tried to take root within the SS, I think there was a move by the other officers to try to stop them. And I think this was also in concert with an investigation being conducted by Martin Bormann's office, who were trying to discredit the SS by showing that they were a bunch of wackos. And this, I think, inevitably came to a head because Rahn was unable to prove his Aryan ancestry. In fact, when he fills out his Arnon pass, he's brutally honest and does not attempt to disguise his Jewish lineage, which is bizarre, but then we have to also believe that truth is the essential quality of a quest knight. So Otto didn't lie, even though you might imagine that writing such a thing down was signing one's death warrant. Yet the document is in the Bundesarchiv in Germany, and he did fill it out and he did submit it, and it's still on file. So there's that. Also, he wrote complaining letters to Heinrich Himmler and to his personal adjutant, complaining about first the conditions in the camps and then about the anti-Semitism, which started to become manifest after Reichskristallnacht. Otto thought that if the leadership were aware of the abuses, that maybe it would be stopped. He was sufficiently naive not to realize that the criminality was effectively endemic to the entire system. And these complaining letters become more more hysterical as we get closer to the war. A sentence that springs to mind is it is no longer possible for a tolerant, decent individual to live in the country that my homeland has become. So yeah, Otto was obviously increasingly the wrong man in the wrong place, and I think he was also outed for his gay background. And somewhere in just before the outbreak of the war, he attempts to escape Germany and attempts to flee the SS.
Richard, where did you find these correspondence? I mean, evidence of these correspondence with Himmler. Is that available in? I mean, did somebody save Otto's papers, or how did you find this material?
Well, all the stuff that he sent to Karl Wolff is on file in various places. Karl Wolff was Himmler's personal adjutant and Himmler's Wolfie. And Wolff's an interesting character because he survived the war and became a kind of resource to Reich historians. He's like one of the principal narrators of the World at War TV series, and did a lot of press. He basically kind of, I would say 90% of what we think we know about the inner workings of the SS is probably coming from Karl Wolff,
Oh,
which
interesting,
is
interesting.
yeah, he's more responsible for creating our picture of the SS than we should think, and it's a tricky thing. I mean, I sat in on the trial of the Holocaust denier David Irving, the British historian, and I remember they were trying to introduce testimony from Karl Wolff into the trial regarding the death chambers at Auschwitz, and when the barrister asked Irving whether he considered Wolff to be a reliable witness. I remember Irving kind of scrunched up in his face and said, "Well, it's a bit of a curate's egg, really," which, says it well. So we do have half the story. And Wolff also wrote Otto's obituary. There's significant pieces of it missing. We do not know really what the internal proceedings were against Otto. And also, Otto wrote three books, only two of which survive. The manuscript of the third book, the third part of his Grail thesis, is sadly missing, and no clue as to which black hole that fell down. It apparently started at the Icelandic North Cape because Otto went to the North Pole. He went to the Arctic with the Ahnenerbe SS. The third book, which starts at the Arctic Circle, is missing. I believe it was completed in 1936, 3 years before he died. But
This idea of the Nazis doing something in the North Pole is always very interesting. And you have evidence that by the way, I put up a picture for those who are watching. This is one of the surviving pictures of Otto Rahn, who probably in the end was a decent man who got caught up with the wrong people. I guess the Nazis were very good at making people disappear. He's in good company. But what do we know about what was going on in the North Pole region? What were the Nazis trying to do up there? I mean, they were involved in so many crazy things. What does evidence show that that would bring Otto there?
well, this is the freaky part is that that part's missing. And try as you might, there's a funny sort of blank spot over what were the Nazis doing at the pole again. And we know they went there. Otto went with a shipload of SS men on the Schwabenland. And they flew their own flag, which was a blue swastika, which was kind of unique to the trip. But there's not a single photograph of an SS man holding a swastika at the North or the South Pole, and you can bet they must have taken photographs at least. And Otto's book, which is meant to start from the Icelandic North Cape, is missing. And trying to adequately pin down what the Nazis really thought they were doing at the pole. There's a lot of mythology. People talk about the hollow earth theory. about people broadcast sending radar waves up into the air, thinking they might bounce them back off the concavity of the hollow Earth. But all of it sounds like cover stories, like the story of like the Nazi versions of the Roswell crash retrieval story.
Right.
I don't. I'm not convinced the Hollow Earth is what it was really about. But in terms of a straight up answer, it's scarily unclear. It's a bit of history which seems to still be redacted or still inaccessible to Reich historians, and someone should really yeah go after that a lot harder.
Now, getting back to Montsegur and the home of the Cathars, in addition to running around the castle and examining it in a fine-tooth way, you've also explored some caves in the area. What is significant about these caves?
Well, in the high history of Montsegur, the story of the castle, we know that the sacred treasure of the heretics was there, because there's a little bit of documentation, just one letter from the last head of the Cathar Church to the Lord of Montsegur saying, "Please, can we take refuge in your castle and bring with us the treasures of our faith to be stored infra castrum," using this funny word infracastrum. It's a medieval word. No one knows whether that means under the protection of the castle, under the aegis of the castle, or literally under the castle. And the sense that Montsegur is itself hollow or has hidden caves, a hidden necropolis, and an underground lake. We know there's an underground lake that I think has been proven. There's a river which ducks under and comes out the other side, and the local geologist is convinced there's a pretty large subterranean body of water in there. But to date, only two skeletons have been retrieved from the site, and we know that over a period of multiple lifetimes, many people died there. Certainly in the siege, there's not firewood to be able to cremate people to the point that you can't find their teeth anymore. So we suggest that the true necropolis has not yet been found. And beyond that, there's a myth that on the night of the burning in March 16, 1244, some people escaped from the castle bearing with them the sacred what's it, the sacred treasure that everyone else is chasing. And in the myth, they cross the Tabor, the Pic de Saint Barthélemy, and go down into the Valley of Usat and take refuge in the caves. And there's a running story that during the time of persecution, like the Christians in the catacombs of Rome and bygone times, that the last of the heretics tried to rally in the caves of the Ariège on the other side of the Tabor. The one that's on the screen behind your head is a cave called the Église, the church or the cathedral. And certainly there's sconces for candles all over those walls, and dry stone constructions which do date to the 12th or the 13th century. So there's some consistent archaeological evidence to suggest that people were certainly there. Then
Now,
beyond that, yeah.
I'm sorry, excuse me for interrupting. You mention in the book the discovery of these what you call bloodstones. What is the significance of these little? I think you found these in the cave. I think you said that.
Yeah, those came out of the Grotto of Fontenay,
Oh,
and there is an issue with it's certainly one of the caves. Fontenay is of particular interest because it's the same name as the cave that the hermit lives in Parsifal, the 12th century troubadour epic. Parsifal, after failing to achieve the Grail, ends up in the course of his journeys with the hermit Trevrisant, who lives in a cave called Fontenay de Sauvage, the Wild Fountain. And Rahn identified this cave of Fontenay in the Ariège with the cave of the hermit from Parsifal. The hermit initiates Parsifal, and he's also described. It says that he would eat neither flesh nor fowl. The hermit's clearly a vegetarian, and tells him the the tale of the stones from the sky, the black bleeding stones that are effectively holds the secret of immortality or if not immortality of at least being able to strengthen and nourish oneself so one might live a long lifetime. That's clearly described in the 12th century text.
What,
So
what are we looking at here? Are we looking at a stone that is, I mean, does the red in the stone suddenly appear, or is it there? I mean, how do these stones
you have to rub
transform?
two of them together. You
And
have to,
then, yeah.
yeah, it happens when you bring two of them together and rub them, and it's basically a ferrous solution that's 99% pure iron that resembles blood. But one of the other oddities is that they're so hyperdense that they don't rust. You'd think that they would turn to lumps of rust, but they remain smooth and dark and don't tarnish. They're super strange things, and at present, we still have not been able to determine whether they're meteoric aerolites or tektites, because they're found in the caves of the Ariège, but they're also found at a deep strata of the valley. And our current assumption is that if they're meteoric debris and are really from another planet, then it's something that probably happened millions of years ago. And that debris probably lay in a deep strata until the Ice Age, when the glacier that cut the valley of the Ariège plowed some of it up to the surface. And since then, the stones have become, I guess, the object of a cult. And in the 1930s, Otto Rahn and one of his buddies, Antonin Gdal, removed a large bleeding meteorite from this cave in the Ariège. It was apparently in a sort of rough chalice made out of the concavity of a stalagmite. And this object is dubbed the Graal Pyrenean, still exists. And I'm pleased to say that it's still here in the mountains. It's been stolen a couple of times, but each time it's been retrieved. And most recently, it was taken by the Rosicrucians to Amsterdam, to the Netherlands, and one of the folk from down here in the Ariège went up to the Netherlands and took it back. It's currently, I believe, in Tarascon in the Ariège, and it's, I guess, this meteoric stone could tick one of the boxes for a potential Holy Grail.
So when it's stored in Ariage, is it stored in a museum? Where is it stored?
Well, it was publicly displayed until around the beginning of the 80s, and then it vanished into private hands. And there was a recent move by the Britman family and by the LR, the Lectorium Rosicrucianum in the Netherlands, to try to basically take the Graal Pyrenean, and they wanted to leave behind a replica. And that's now led to I believe, a court action. So I think the relic is currently back in Tarascon, and it's the subject of of litigation. But the darn thing does float around. The Nazis didn't get it, and I think
What's completely fascinating about the story, we've got Nazis, we've got meteorites, we've got mythos, we've got the Grail. This is just such an incredible story. Now, when you were commissioned by the BBC to do your documentary and first came across Otto Rahn and his quest, did you see it? I mean, where did you journey at that time? Where were you getting your footage? Did you come to your area where Montsegur is back in 90 for the first time? Were you led there?
wasn't so much that I was led there. I've always had a policy to go to the place, and I strongly advise people to do the same, particularly when you're dealing with any kind of mystery. Go and check it out. And it made sense to go to source. Otto said that Montsegur was the castle of the Holy Grail. So we went to Montsegur to check it out. And I guess also from a filmmaking point of view. We wanted to see if there were nice locations and how we would present this thing. So I did take a an all expenses paid trip to the Montsegur to check out the Grail Castle.
Well,
And
I've been to France several times. What is the route to get to your area? Where you're in southwestern or southeastern France?
kind of southeastern France. It's right at the bottom of the country because it used to be another country up until the 13th century and then was annexed into France. So yeah, we're right, yeah, right at the bottom, and it doesn't really behave like France. But yeah, Montsegur slapped me around hard on my first meeting, which is how the first chapter of the book starts. Because having read it, you'd be aware that I was planning just to visit for one night, take some photographs, and as you do on a location scout, and keep moving. But I was determined to walk up to the castle with my then girlfriend, and just to watch the sunset and have a smoke and take a look at the surrounding land. And we got caught in an apocalyptic electrical storm, a late summer crazy storm that came in at us like the mothership in Close Encounters and wrapped itself around the top of the mountain, and bolts of lightning started striking into the mountain above and below us, giving the impression of what looked like fiery fingers reaching down out of a vortex into the castle. So this made Otto's claim of it being the Grail Castle much more convincing to me. It made it much more difficult for me to completely overlook it. And when I turned into research, the other historians and the folk at Channel 4 said, yeah, this is great. It shows how deranged the Nazis really were and how irrational they could be. And I had a slight problem with that because the further in I'd gone, the more convincing it had seemed. The more it seemed that Otto had a pretty good case, and that there was indeed a story in there.
Did
And
Did in your 90 document in your 1990 documentary, aside from coming into the area of Montsegur, did you end up visiting that SS castle you were talking about, the one that they commissioned?
yeah, in the end, we did the grand tour and tried to follow it all the way, and that entailed going to the Schloss Wewelsburg. And the Schloss Wewelsburg near Paderborn really is a bad place. It's a weird thing. Montsegur, with its white walls, feels like something out of J.R.R. Tolkien. It's something that should exist in Gondor. But yeah, the Schloss Wewelsburg with its black walls and the stunted trees surrounding it, and the extraordinary history of the place. Because what's creepy about it is that it was the seat of the witch hunters. Back in the 16th century and the 17th century, it was the seat of the bishops of Paderborn, and underneath it is the Hexenkeller, which is the torture chamber where they tortured the witches. So long before the Nazis got there, the place was already evil. It was picked out by Willigott Weistor, the rune mage, Himmler's Rasputin or Crowley character, and Himmler restored it through the principle of extermination through labor. People were worked to death there in groups of 12 at a time, mostly in restoring the North Tower with its Grail chamber, where there's 12 plinths surrounding this central circle, which I guess is the epicenter of Heinrich Himmler's Dark Empire. The Temple of Set founder Michael Aquino described as the great gate of the powers of darkness in our times. So it's a somber place with a dark history. Also the site of Niederhagen concentration camp, which is where they drew their workforce from. But Himmler's plans were never realized. The work was thankfully never completed on his grand occult design.
By the way, the Montségur area, that whole area of eastern France you're talking about in the bottom of the country, was that spared any fighting around there during World War II? Did the Allies go through that area, or is it kind of not important for them?
You would think it would not be important, but sadly, one of the things that has ultimately convinced me of the reality of the supernatural is the way that events recur, the way that in different time streams things keep echoing and happening over and over again. So exactly 7 centuries later, from the mass burning at Montsegur, when the last of the so-called Cathars were allegedly dragged down the mountain, chained by the necks and the hands, and burned in the Camp de Cremat, the field of the stake. Exactly 7 centuries later, on March 16th, 1944, the Third Panzer Division Das Reich rolls into Montsegur. And all we know is that they shot some partisans who were allegedly operating cross-border raids into Franco's Spain as part of a pact between Franco and Hitler. There were Catalan partisans who were striking into Spain across the border, and the Third Panzer Division came after them. And it was my landlady, Madame Couquet's uncle, who identified the partisans. Which again, but like Karl Wolf's testimony, I don't know. There's a little memorial to the people who were prejudicially shot. I think about 3 people were prejudicially murdered.
So this
And
this is this is March 44. So this is pre-invasion. Uh, this whole area was part of Vichy France, correct? It was under. It was. I mean, it wasn't garrisoned so much as it was
Yeah,
separate.
they collaborated. I mean, I know this from Vichy era records, which explicitly name Madame's uncle, who was the mayor at the time. And I don't know if the people he pointed out were people who had stolen his girl when he was a kid or owned the field next door to his. It's the same as the accusations against heretics in Inquisition times. False accusations are a thing in Montsegur. And these things come in creepy cycles. There's also a local myth that after 7 centuries the old ways will return. That after après 7 siècles the laurier reverdia, after 7 centuries the laurel will turn green again. And this some folk have tried to calculate that from March 16th, 1244, which would give you a due date of March 16th, 1944. But we generally think if there was a due date, it was probably March 16th, 2021, because the so-called Cathar prophecy is the utterance of Wilhelm Bellybast, the last Cathar adept who was burned in the town square in Villarouge Termine in 1321. He's the man who's meant to have said after 7 centuries the laurel will turn green again, which would give us 2021 as the due date. And it's to be said that it's intense out here at the moment, and has been for quite a while. Whatever occult forces are vested against each other, it continues into the present day.
Well, that was 4 years ago. So were you present when that date took place? Were you present for anything?
Unfortunately, I was. Yes, I have a habit of trying to be on the field of the stake every March 16th, and of repeating the roll call of the names of the people, of the martyrs, which is also included in the one of the appendices of Otto Rahn Grail Hunter,
Oh.
because I figure that that needs to be remembered. And whatever force repairs the matrix, whatever doesn't like that stuff, is constantly trying to erase it from existence. And we're facing at the moment some kind of high level move to try and shut Catharism down again, which is super odd. Um, Basically, UNESCO are refusing to recognize Montsegur as a World Heritage Site unless all reference to the C word, the Cathars, which according to the opposition, it never existed. and the siege of 1244 are removed from the signage, so that and already the names of the martyrs have been removed from the local museum in Montsegur. Also, this summer, the Centre d'Etudes Cathars, René Nelly and Madame Nelly's Cathar Center in Carcassonne was closed down after a massive internet campaign accusing them of promulgating anti-Semitism and right-wing propaganda. So, and if you read the book, you'll see that Madame Nelly actually kind of was really right wing and is a bit of a Nazi and a dragon lady. But yeah, there's something going on at the moment which I believe is connected to that prophecy. I think I don't know who's behind it. I think conservative Christianity, Opus Dei, some kind of force which just doesn't want people to remember that that happened.
Didn't you say, or didn't I read that they're actually trying to turn Montsegur into an amusement park, and that you were helpful in stopping that ridiculousness?
Yeah, that happened too.
The idea, what are they going to put a roller coaster up on the top near the castle? And
I've got no idea, but the advertising was ridiculous. It all looked like Cinderella with sort of Cinderella type lady flouncing through the field holding hands with a knight. And it was like, ah, guys, this is a scene of a medieval massacre where one deity faced off against another, and the whole people died because of their faith. It's not like that. And
Richard, if you go to Montsegur, what is the nearest town with some facilities if you wanted to stay in a hotel or wanted to just have some place to rest your body while you're visiting this area? Is there a township? Is that where you live?
There's a few places around. We're closest to Carcassonne, is the largest big town, I guess. But it's gotten harder. Both hotels in Montsegur are closed. Obviously, unfortunately, Madame Couquet, my hostess in Montsegur, died a few years ago, and the Maison Couquet is now closed. There's almost nowhere to stay in Montsegur, which makes it very inhospitable to pilgrims. But yeah, how that went was yeah, there was a theme park initiative. We eventually defeated the theme park initiative. The main thing that I was concerned about was that during that time they wanted to electrify Montsegur and to light the castle at night, so that it would be which is something they do in a lot of ancient remains, but none of us wanted hundreds of thousands of volts being put into the castle, and we also knew that by blasting all that light in there, no one was probably going to ever see apparitions again. So we had to. It is now a dark skies zone. We were able to win it on the back of the unique species that are there. There's one unique species of golden salamander. We've got a Pyrenean giant toad. It's full of a very rare form of long-eared bat. So there are a number of nocturnal species which inhabit the castle and the pog, which basically enabled us to win the argument. At that point in time as well, we reached out to UNESCO, and Montsegur was subsequently shortlisted as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then the commune of Montsegur made a strategic error and basically bought all the land as far as the skyline, which some of which had been previously private land used by farmers, with the intention of turning the entire region into a natural park. And then the UNESCO deal didn't come through. They didn't get the trickle down economy they thought they were going to get. And in an insane maneuver, because they couldn't pay the interest on the loans they'd taken to buy the land, the Mairie of Montsegur ceded mineral rights to a subsidiary of Rio Tinto, a mining company that then proceeded to find vast deposits a hitherto unidentified mineral element related to steatite, something called Imerus HARG, a hitherto unknown mineral element beneath the Holy Mountain, which they thought could be a non-carcinogenous alternative to talcum powder. After the Johnson and Johnson case, so at that point we suddenly basically got the Harkonnens from Dune, which was
So I gotta ask you the question because your book is such a journey. Your whole world is such a fascinating world that you've been studying. You are a filmmaker by trade. You've made films. You've made both documentaries and feature films. I'm sure you've thought about turning your story into a feature film. Have you written a screenplay?
well, that's how this started out. When I realized that Channel 4 television weren't going to do the real life Indiana Jones show that they had commissioned. Um, I was already so far into the story. I thought, wow, this is going to make a tremendous movie, and I kept going deeper. And unfortunately, at this point in my career, no one has ever entrusted me with a period film.
Hmm.
And the not only the period setting, which is mighty expensive, but the insanely edgy and controversial subject matter. Just the sheer fact that Otto is a gay Jewish Nazi already is bad enough. And, it's I mean the story of the siege of Montsegur is an incredible story. And I know there was a point when Ridley Scott was interested in it. I actually managed to get like 20 minutes of Ridley Scott's time, and he just told me that he thought it was impossible, that it would take the same kind of budget you would need for Avatar, but it's a story in which the Christians are the bad guys, and where the witches and heretics are kind of the good guys, and also where all the good people lose and the forces of darkness triumph.
It,
So
it, it,
yeah.
it is it is a story that spans centuries, though. I actually think that given the current tastes, that the story of Otto and his experiences probably would be a little more easier, not easier, but a little less fraught to film than going back and doing the siege of Montsegur. Although things are changing, with digital effects and AI now and the ability to create backgrounds that don't involve hundreds of film technicians, who knows what will happen. But everybody, you must get a copy of Richard's book. I'm going to put it up again on the screen because I think that the very least, you're going to get an education on a period of history that you've never heard of. But more importantly, you're going to find it to be a fascinating journey involving a rich source of characters. One of the things I found most interesting, and even just hearing you speak, Richard, is how many people you had to identify and explain their position in the story. There are literally hundreds of them with all different agendas, et cetera. I congratulate you on the depth of your research. Have you had a good response to the book from everyone? Has it been a positive for you?
Well, I think the biggest positive to me is when it falls into the hands of someone like our friend Stash, who has a deep knowledge of the esoteric and who actually likes it and endorses it, because I was terrified of making too many cardinal errors, and a lot of it's magical and occult history, which is such a weird terrain. Trying to fact check this thing, it's a monster of 30 years of fact checking, and as Charles Fort points out, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The more extraordinary the story becomes, the more you need some kind of fact documentation to back it up. So it's been an extraordinary puzzle, and I've also tried with the book to make it into a workbook for future Grail hunters, because I've included maps and primary documents, Otto's sketch map of the journey, a lot of place names. So I think it rewards further expeditions and excursions.
What is your current plan in terms of what are you involved in at the moment? I know you've been preserving the area from developers and miscreants, but tell me what is your big goal at the moment?
I got a bunch of things irons on the fire. My big goal at the moment is I'm still working to bring another H.P. Lovecraft movie to the screen.
Oh,
And this entails rehabilitating Lovecraft, and to this effect, I've basically created a production company based in Providence, Rhode Island, with the express purpose of of adapting Lovecraft stories and shooting them in New England. And that's
oh,
a great desire. I want to, as with Otto Rahn, a gay Jewish Nazi. I think Howard Phillips Lovecraft has been misunderstood. And, I would like to set the record straight and get the Dunwich horror done. So there's that. And then not leaving the twilight world of the 1930s entirely, I'm currently working on a second book because Otto Rahn Grail Hunter is my first book, and I'm delighted to finally be an author. It's something that I always wanted to be. So yeah,
author
as it seems.
author extraordinaire, because the depth of your research is just off the charts, and I can't say enough about the book. We have been listening and watching Richard Stanley, the author of Otto Rahn Grail Hunter. Like I said before, you must get this book. It is a beautifully illustrated, by the way. In fact, the production of the book is very strong. You know, that's something that I've learned with my own books, that if you get just the other day, my publisher informed me that the quality of paper on the reissue will not be as strong. So I was a little disappointed by that. But you have a very nice paper in your book. It makes for a nice production. We don't take that too lightly. And
Well, it was important that people see the places,
no,
because that
no,
was certainly also what convinced me as I was following Otto's trail. So all the places he was writing about were immediately extremely impressive and were clearly imbued with some kind of mystical force. So I kind of needed the photographs just to make
sure.
that point.
Sure. Well, everybody, that's the end of this week's show. I'm your host, Steve Rubin. Our producer is Ben Shrewsbury. If you enjoyed this show, please give us a thumbs up. Any type of criticism we'll take. We love hearing from our fans. I also every week point out to my other podcast, Tales from Hollywoodland, which I co-host with Arthur E. Friedman and Julian Schlossberg. We can find that by Googling Tales from Hollywoodland. Thank you for watching and listening to Saturday Night at the Movies. Thank you so much, Richard. And by the way,
It's been a pleasure, sir.
you can find the book on Amazon if you don't find it in your local bookstore. That's definitely where I picked up my copy. Thank you so much.
Ah, thank you indeed.